What if the operating system on your gaming PC isn't just slowing down your games, but quietly reshaping the entire future of PC gaming in Microsoft's favor? Today, over 66% of Steam-connected users run Windows 11, and that number keeps growing. Yet more and more gamers are waking up to a disturbing pattern: updates that tank performance, background services that slow everything down, and a growing push to lock your library into Xbox Game Pass and Microsoft's own storefront. This isn't a rumor or a conspiracy, it's a shift in how Microsoft is restructuring PC gaming around its own ecosystem, and Steam is exposing how fragile that structure really is. In this video, you'll see exactly what Microsoft is doing, how it's changing the way PC games are bought, played, and controlled, and why many players feel that their relationship with Windows has gone from partnership to extraction. From the moment Windows 11 launched, Microsoft framed it as a new era for PC gaming. The company said it wanted to make every PC into an Xbox, using the Xbox app, Game Pass, and cloud streaming to blur the line between console and computer. The official pitch was simple: you get deeper integration with achievements, cloud saves, friends lists, and a massive library of games for a monthly fee. Microsoft argued that this would lower the barrier to entry, letting people play high-end titles on mid-range hardware or even on laptops via streaming. The company also promoted features like direct storage, auto HDR, and game mode as technical upgrades that would make games load faster, look better, and run smoother on Windows 11 compared to the old Windows 10 baseline. To the average user, this sounded like progress: one ecosystem, one account, one place to buy, install, and play games without thinking about which platform you're on. Under the hood, however, Microsoft was laying the groundwork for a much tighter control over how games are distributed, how they are monetized, and how your time is spent on the machine Microsoft already owns. Here is how Microsoft presents it. Windows 11 is the game-ready version of Windows, with Xbox baked in so you can switch between productivity and play without friction. The Xbox app is now pre-installed, and Game Pass is pushed front and center as a default option for discovering and playing games. On the developer side, Microsoft has repeatedly lowered its revenue cut in the Microsoft Store, down to around 12% or even less in some cases, to make it more attractive compared to Steam's 30% cut. The implication is that Windows 11 is not just an operating system anymore. It is a curated gaming storefront wrapped around a general-purpose PC. The goal, as Microsoft has publicly stated, is to make gaming feel native to Windows again, to keep users inside the Microsoft ecosystem from login to purchase to playback. To the casual observer, this looks like a win-win: more convenience for players, more exposure for developers, and more revenue for Microsoft. But what investigators and performance testers have found is something very different. Steam-based benchmarks and real-world tests show that Steam OS, running on identical hardware, often beats Windows 11 in raw frame rates, input latency, and especially battery life. In direct comparisons on devices like the Lenovo Legion Go S, Steam OS delivered over twice as many hours of play in lightweight games like Dead Cells, while remaining competitive or even superior in heavier titles. Analysts and tech reviewers have described this as a bloodbath for Windows 11's gaming performance, because it reveals how much Microsoft's own operating system is dragging down the hardware it's supposed to unlock. Gamers are not just buying weaker performance, they are paying for bloat. Background telemetry, Cortana-style helpers, Copilot injections, and persistent Xbox-related services all consume CPU time, memory, and disk I/O that could otherwise be used by your games. Independent testers have documented update patches that cut frame rates in major titles by roughly half until emergency GPU drivers are released, reinforcing the idea that Windows 11 is tuned more for Microsoft's vision than for gamers' needs. In one particularly striking pattern, investigators ran the same game setups on Windows 11 and Steam OS, then compared thermal behavior, battery drain, and response times. The Windows builds consistently showed higher power draw, more background process noise, and longer level load times, even when all visual settings were identical. This is not just about raw speed, it's about how much of the PC's potential is being siphoned off by Microsoft's own ecosystem. Many gamers assume that as long as they keep their libraries on Steam, they are insulated from Microsoft's influence. You buy once, own forever, and launch through your own interface. That's Steam's core promise. But what tends to get overlooked is how much of that experience still runs on Windows, and how Microsoft can change the rules of the underlying platform at any time. Because Windows commands such a dominant share of the PC market, regulators have long treated it as a potential lever for anti-competitive behavior. When Microsoft intertwined Windows with Xbox Game Pass, Copilot AI, and cloud services, it created a situation where opting out of Microsoft's ecosystem can mean opting out of core Windows features, or even of using Windows at all. Analysts have warned that this kind of bundling risks foreclosing alternatives because users who want to play cloud-streamed games are effectively pushed toward Windows and Microsoft's own storefronts. That's why, when you see SteamOS outperforming Windows 11 on the same hardware, it's not just a technical curiosity, it's a sign that Microsoft's model is fundamentally more awake, taxing, more extractive, and less efficient for gaming than the minimalist, purpose-built alternative Valve has built. From a regulatory and expert perspective, the concern is less about raw performance and more about how Microsoft is using its control over the operating system to shape the gaming market. The European Commission and other antitrust bodies have already scrutinized Microsoft's Activision Blizzard acquisition and its impact on cloud streaming rivals, explicitly flagging how tying Windows to exclusive Game Pass titles could weaken competing platforms. While Microsoft made some concessions like licensing certain games to cloud services, it still controls both the dominant OS and one of the largest game subscription services, giving it enormous leverage over how players access and pay for games. Academics and antitrust analysts have pointed out that if Microsoft ties high-profile franchises exclusively to Windows-based distribution or to Game Pass, it could discourage both users and developers from investing in alternative operating systems or storefronts. This kind of behavior is not just about market share. It's about making it harder for ecosystems like SteamOS or Linux-based gaming rigs to gain serious traction, even when they demonstrably perform better. Now, let's bring this back to you. The real impact is not abstract. It's about how your money, your time, and your hardware are being used. Imagine a student who upgraded to Windows 11 expecting a better gaming experience, only to find that casual games like Hollow Knight or Stardew Valley drain their laptop battery in half, the time they used to on Windows 10. Their hardware hasn't changed, but the software has been made heavier, more ad-dense, and more AI-driven, all in service of Microsoft's broader strategy. For example, a developer who relies on Windows for their work environment might notice that background services related to Xbox, Copilot, and telemetry are competing with their build tools, causing stuttery performance in both game engines and streaming software. This is not simply bad optimization, it reflects a deliberate choice to prioritize Microsoft's ecosystem services over raw system responsiveness. Consider a player who enjoys handheld-style PC gaming. On a device like the Legion Go S, SteamOS can give them several extra hours of play in the same title, simply because it strips out the bloat and runs only what the game actually needs. That same game on Windows 11, with the same hardware, eats through battery faster and sometimes drops frames because of background processes that Microsoft has no incentive to remove. In each of these hypothetical cases, the pattern is the same. The user owns the hardware, but the operating system is increasingly optimized for Microsoft's goals, not their own. After criticism started piling up, Microsoft has made some changes, but not the kind that fundamentally rewrite the balance of power. The company has promised to improve PC gaming performance in 2026, acknowledging that recent updates have hurt frame rates and introduced stability issues. It has also tweaked telemetry settings and added switches to disable certain AI features in specific editions of Windows 11. However, these fixes are often buried deep in settings menus, and they rarely touch the underlying structure that the Xbox app still launches on startup. Game Pass is still promoted in the Start menu, and the Microsoft Store remains the default suggested location for game downloads. Independent testers have found that even when you disable individual services, the cumulative effect of Windows 11's background footprint is still noticeably worse for gaming than a leaner, purpose-built OS like SteamOS. In one striking comparison, experts ran the same game on both Windows 11 and SteamOS, then measured how much of the system resources were actually being used by the game versus the operating system. The gap was significant. Windows 11 consumed far more CPU and memory for the same visual output, effectively making your hardware feel weaker than it is. That is the structural problem. You may have turned off a few features, but the underlying architecture is still designed to keep you inside Microsoft's ecosystem, not to maximize your gaming experience. So what can you actually do as a gamer who uses Windows right now? The first step is to reduce how much Microsoft controls your default experience. Go to Settings greater than Apps greater than Startup, and turn off non-essential Microsoft services such as the Xbox app, Xbox Game Bar, and Copilot from launching automatically. In Settings, greater than System, greater than Power and Battery, choose a performance-oriented power plan and disable unnecessary background apps that can wake up and consume resources while you're in a game. In Settings greater than Privacy and Security greater than background apps, switch off apps that don't need to run in the background, especially those tied to Microsoft's ecosystem. If you are using Windows 11, you can also disable widgets, Copilot, and some telemetry by going to Settings greater than System, greater than Notifications and Actions, and turning off Get Tips, Tricks, and Suggestions and similar options. For more advanced users, Steam's Proton and SteamOS represent a real alternative. If your primary use for a machine is gaming, switching to SteamOS on a dedicated handheld or small form factor PC can give you better performance, longer battery life, and fewer distractions from Microsoft's ecosystem. This is not a plug-and-play swap for everyone, especially if you rely on certain anti-cheat systems or Windows-only launchers. But for many gamers, it is a viable and increasingly attractive option. At its core, what Steam is exposing is this. Your operating system doesn't just run your games anymore, it runs Microsoft's strategy too. The more tightly Windows 11 is woven into Xbox, Game Pass, and AI services, the more your PC starts to feel like a client for Microsoft's cloud and subscription plans rather than a tool you fully control. Steam's success, SteamOS's performance gains, and the growing number of players who consider Linux or SteamOS as their primary gaming environment all point in one direction. There is a real demand for a model where games are owned, not rented, and where the OS works for the player, not for the platform holder. As regulations and public scrutiny keep pressure on how Microsoft structures its control over Windows and gaming, your choices as a user matter more than ever. If you found this breakdown useful, please like this video, share it with at least one other gamer who uses Windows, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future investigations into how tech companies are reshaping the platforms you use every day. Your awareness is the first step toward pushing back against the hidden forces that are quietly changing how you play and how much you actually own.